Sandbox games, one of my favorite genres out there, and many reasons why too, as I love creating random stuff in video games, like this, and this, and this. If you've been a long time viewer of the channel, then you probably already know this yourself, but for those who are new, hi, my name is Chris, and welcome to this lovely abode on my side of the internet, where we make a lot of videos on Lego Fortnite. And if you clicked on this video, you may be interested, and okay, let's be real here, you're probably more interested in the other game that just released, but according to my delusions, you will. So today's video, we're doing just that. As if you clicked on this video, you may be interested in hearing my lovely voice, or more likely, learning some cool tricks inside of the game mode, or especially for those who are just jumping in with the recent Ninjago update and for the future updates to come to the mode. And who knows, you may learn something or hear something and say you may want to try out for your own builds, which, who knows, that's kind of the point of this video. So, with that all being said, let's just jump in for the first topic that I want to talk about, which is inspiration. Which inspiration, in my opinion, is one of the main important things when it comes to making builds, because obviously, you need to have an idea of what you're working on before you jump into a build. Personally, for me, 9 times out of 10, and more likely the case, is this: I have a random idea that I like to try, I just don't know where to start. Which leads me to the first three things. 9 times out of 10, I'll just free-flow the build because I think it's funny. But the two other things that are actually the most useful, I think is most importantly to talk about, is concept art and reference images. Concept art for me is something I do relatively often, more so to design the layout for Lego City videos, but concept art can be really cool for me as someone who's an artist, and I just like drawing random stuff, and gives me an overall idea of where I may want to take a design for a build. In fact, here's some few of these designs on the screen. Reference images are kind of similar to that in vein, as they're more so giving me a stylistic idea for the theme that I may want to go for, or 9 out of 10 when I'm making a recreation of something like Bindi, FNAF. I typically use a lot of screenshots from the games to use as the reference images or the source for my recreation and inspiration. Nailed it. So when making builds, I do recommend trying a combination of both of these three things, as they can be relatively useful for your own creations. I think the most useful and most recent case can actually be seen in my last Lego Fortnite survival video, which I definitely recommend checking out. Plug! But for players who are just jumping in, I definitely recommend a combination of the three, as even though I mentioned at the start, free-flowing can be relatively useful, is the thing that I go for the most. And normally, as I mentioned before, I have an idea that's in the back of my head, and all it takes is me getting jump-started something, and that's how most of my builds are created, besides using reference images for recreations. And concept art, as I mentioned before, is mostly used for layout designs. The best case of this can actually be seen from one of my favorite builds, which was this Dr. Doom's castle build, which is behind me currently. God, it's beautiful, and it's just amazing. Reference images, once again, can also be useful in layouts over time, as well as you may have an idea and see jumpstart or something, but the idea will evolve over time. And overall, like I said before, a combination of the three will definitely help you in the end. And overall will lead you to a better result, in my opinion, and let your just imagination shine. I hope I'm making sense. But yeah, that's basically it for this whole section of me just giving you guys some ideas where you can start off with builds. So with that being said, let's just jump right into the tips. Alright, so give a proper idea what I'm talking about. We're jumping in game here. Alright, Groot, we're jumping in game. Groot's been throwing me off, guys. I've been recording too many takes of this. We're starting off with what I consider to be the basics, or the most important things to know inside of Lego Fortnite, which, of course, I think the main thing that's very important to know is obviously your pieces, as they're the main thing that you work with and giving you an overall idea of what you can work with. However, the sad thing, and my own personal pet peeve of the mode, is a lot of these are actually Lego Pass releases, or the stuff that hasn't been in the item shop for months, besides the things that I'm highlighting currently on screen. These are the ones that are free when you first jump in the game. I need someone to correct me on this. I do not know if Divers in the Main is one that you have for free, as I know for a fact that was for people who played Expeditions before it got the mist. So let me know if you're a new player and you have this. I'm very curious about that, and please let me know down in the comments below. But the reason why it's important to know is the fact that, it lets you give you an idea of what you can work with, and even if you first start in Lego Fortnite, there's a bunch of cool pieces that you have to work with, like different color varieties and all this cool stuff, which is pretty cool, as you see here. And of course, I think another reason why it's important to know your pieces is, of course, sometimes it can be very inconsistent with stuff like Palm Paradise, which is my main key example of this. As last week, we got one of my new favorite pieces, which is the 2x2, but for some reason, they started getting rid of pieces in certain places, like here, the blue pieces, which you have the 2x6, and then for some reason for the blue pieces here, it is no 2x6, which is partially because Epic started making the pieces for the lovely building pieces just come from straight from the builds, what they use to create these almighty structures. And it can be very frustrating as a builder. Some stuff gets left out, and I cannot tell you how many times there's like a 2x2 gap, and it gets so freaking frustrating, man. I cannot, like, But as well, you can be very creative with what you do with these pieces, more specifically with the thruster trick. And I think the good example of this is actually over here with my Poke Center build. Let me explain. So the thruster trick is this amazing cryptic thing which you can almighty use the thruster, which is all the way over here in your toys, and you can grab it here, and you can grab, let's say, a floor piece. And they made this a lot easier for another addition they made earlier last year, which was the fact that they made where you can switch planes, which would let you go up and down, and made it so much less frustrating. But now you can do stuff like this, where you can just place stuff on the wall and have things go sideways, which is how I created these like rims on the Poke Center, the fake windows with the Palm Paradise design, and of course the almighty Pokeball symbol, which is being used out of fences over here, which creates this amazing design. The thruster trick is definitely what I consider to be the most important thing from the basics list here, as you can do so much of it. I am not kidding when I say this. You can create stuff like this. You can go over here to my original design area, which is from my last Lego Fortnite survival video. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do another plug for that. We already did one, we can't do another. But as you can see here, I used the thruster trick once again to create the grass edge design for the almighty Green Hill Zone, which looks absolutely astonishing and helps bring it all together. The same can be said with another design, which I might be throwing up on screen right now, but there's a few I will be throwing up probably. Editing Chris, you know what to do. And besides that, that's pretty much what I consider to be the basics, as once you know like that and all that stuff, that's pretty much what I consider to be the quote-unquote basics of the mode. So when it comes to my own personal building tricks, what I'd like to give for you guys is actually a few. First things first is I definitely recommend trying to be creative with the pieces that you have at your disposal, as it can hopefully like influence your imagination and just fuel your creativity of what you can actually do inside the mode. I think the best case I can give for this is actually over here. And there's another tip I want to give before we transition to that little thing over there. But the best thing I can give is definitely this here, which is utilizing both Mos Eisley and the Simpsons house to create this cool little Minecraft window design. And what you're seeing I'm using here is actually the floor pieces from Mos Eisley, more specifically the roof pieces and the walls from the Simpsons house to create this little unique window design, which looks absolutely astonishing. Now, more on a hands approach I can give for detailing of your own Lego pieces and just kind of be creative with the pieces you have at your disposal is definitely with our transition thing here, which is of course depth. I think depth is one of the most important building tips I can give when it comes to sandbox games, as it helps your builds definitely pop out a bit more. But as you see here, we're utilizing what I just talked about. You can also create some amazing designs, and I know this kind of looks simple here, but at a larger scale, something like this would look absolutely astonishing, especially if you do it at repetition. Let me see if I can give you guys a better idea of this. I'm not going to go like full crazy with this, as of course I think there are other stuff to talk about. But let's say you do something like this, and you have it like, say, the edge of a city or a castle. It honestly would look very cool in my opinion, and a nice little thing to know. And as I mentioned before, just having an overall grasp of what we can do with like Lego math and just an idea of like, try to be creative for pieces, as once again, it can help you create some amazing stuff. And leads us to our next week, which I want to talk about, which is depth. I think depth, once again, as I mentioned, is a lovely tool and an incredible thing that you can use inside Lego Fortnite, especially help you make your builds pop out. I mentioned before with this here, and you can see it here, and then you can see it with the phrase here. I know the phrase is a bit scuffed, but I'll have an image on screen showcasing the full build. Overall, I love using depth. Depth can help make a build pop out by a lot and help make things look way more interesting to the eye. Which, once again, I want to talk about another thing that's like using build to make things more interesting to the eye, which is shape. I think shape is definitely one of the more important things when it comes to building inside sandbox games. As even if you have a simple shape such as the Poke Center here, as I mentioned, you can add a lot of tiny details, such as the corners, as I mentioned, to help make everything pop out a bit more. In a better case here is, once again, Freddy's, which is like this piece here. And even though Freddy's is more like a complex shape when it comes down to the full-on build, it is definitely very similar, where it's like something simple, but you add all these tiny little things, make it all come together, and make it all come to life, which is very simple. Also, a good example is the stuff with the Green Hill Zone grass. That's a good example. Works well, too. And a good thing I do want to talk about is you're trying to figure out a shape for a build. Is definitely try using, let's say, like half bowls. I don't really use this as much inside of Lego Fortnite as I do Minecraft, but in Minecraft I do like having an overall base of where I want to take my build, whether it's like having an outline or just an overall like shape idea for what I'm going for. Overall, having like doing something like this works a lot and kind of gives you an idea of something you may want to go for until you find like the proper shape for the build you want to make. And just overall, definitely recommend it. I think the closest thing I've done is definitely the castle build that I mentioned at the start of the video. And overall, in my opinion, helps out a lot, especially if you're like lost at first and you're just trying to free flow build and you're just trying to figure out design for the first time. But besides that, that's basically the main things I want to talk about when it comes to just my normal building tips. So with that being said, let's jump into the final topic of the video, which is interior. So I figured the best way to end out the video, more specifically the best showcase of interior work, is definitely having to be the build that I mentioned the most in this video, which is Dr. Doom's Castle of Doom. And as we go inside, you can definitely see why I mean by this, as you have so many cool design techniques such as pillars and little details here, like this little floor being raised up here, which this is something I do want to bring up real quick, is especially with builds, and especially like if you're working outside as well, is this one last tip for exterior stuff. Okay, I know I mentioned interior, but I thought something else. It's definitely point of view, and a good example of this I'm putting this on screen right now, which is an unintentional point of view that I made in my last survival video. Points of view can help a lot with making your builds just like pop out a bit more, and having especially like a giant area like your own little star base or something like that. And you can see point of view here with like the room being pointed towards this throne, which is being lifted up a bit, which looks absolutely incredible for Victor. And you got some other design takes like bookshelves. There's a lot of bookshelves here. Don't ask questions. And you got some computer monitors here, you got some other stuff as well, but also you have like this little thing here having like the chandeliers like in between, just like little tiny designs. Helps add character to the build, and overall it makes everything stand out a bit more. And speaking of character design, you can actually see a lot of shape going on here for the build, which is one of my favorite things ever. And you're seeing a technique that I love doing with interiors, which I can't overly recommend enough. I absolutely love doing this technique, which is the level design. I love adding level design, especially with interiors. As if you have like, let's say walls inside Lego Fortnite, they have like little like interior walls as well. And if you don't like that, what you can do is you can have something like this, and then you can have like another wall, let's say like this, and you have like one block off, and then you create something like that, which is pretty cool. And when you're using level design, you can do that and also create your own little interior layout. I do this a lot, especially with like the Bindi recreation or FNAF. And this build is no exception to that rule, as it lets me have more freedom and creativity of what I can do with my, like, the structure that I'm working with here, especially with the interior. As you see with, like, Dr. Doom's bedroom here, we have the point of view, once again, as I mentioned before, being pointed towards his bed. And of course, you got a chandelier going on here. But if you're looking this way, it leads to the exit, which is pretty cool. And there's some other things here as well, like this being even with each other. And then you got this little cool thing that also adds shape, like the circular walls using the column sections. Like, what is actually the name for it? Sports. Yeah, the sports section of the building parts page, utilizing the Ravens Roof Gallery. But you have this whole thing that adds like more shape to the build and makes everything kind of stand out a bit more. And I also can say that with the other room, which I'm going to bring up here in a second, if I'm going upstairs all the way to Dr. Doom's Doom Ray of Doom, which is a recreation of the scene from Lego Marvel Superheroes. And once again, back to what I was saying, point of view, it leads up to the old main scene where he's like, "You fools, don't let me, you'll make me use Dr. Doom's Doom Ray of Doom." And once again, I think it's absolutely astonishing. And of course, once again, you also have these little support columns going on over here, where it adds like some depth to the build and makes everything just pop out a bit more, which I absolutely adore and love. But adding little things like this here that adds shape and then adds little details, like overall, just adding details such as bookshelves and just little details like this really helps add character to the build, especially if you're going for a specific recreation, which I think this here is actually a good thing for what I want to talk about next. This kind of goes back to what I was saying before of being creative with pieces have, because you can also use that exact same like mindset to create some awesome decor bits, especially for the interior. You create some awesome little decor for your rooms, especially like this whole recreation of the thing from Lego Marvel Superheroes, this little device here. And you can also do the same thing with a trick that I've been using since Lego Fortnite's launch, before they added the old little campies, which is utilizing the Majestic Manors and Pleasant Park. You can go over to the tables and you can grab this guy, and you go over to the almighty little tabletop chairs here, and then you can build up and create some awesome stuff like this. Look at this, and you just, like, once again, cannot talk about it enough. You can be so creative with what you have in Lego Fortnite to create some awesome designs inside of the game mode, and I cannot enough recommend trying to let your creativity and imagination thrive. If this is my one hot take with this video, and the thing I hope you get the most from this, is I definitely recommend not being afraid to let your creativity go loose. If you have an idea, go for it. If it sounds like, hey, I might not be able to do it, try it until you find out that, hey, you may be actually able to do what you want to do. And overall, that happens a lot to me in Lego Fortnite, where I'm like, oh, let's work, and then I'm like, okay, screw it, I'm gonna try it. And it works, and it looks absolutely amazing, and I don't regret trying it because it looks absolutely incredible. And seriously, I cannot recommend enough trying to let your creativity thrive. And overall, especially for interiors, definitely do that, as adding small details like this can definitely add character to the build. Like this here, it looks like this little lighting I don't really talk about enough, but it looks like Mario 64. And you have this little lab area, which have all these little tiny details. Like seriously, it makes everything come to life, in my opinion. And overall, such a lot of fun, and especially going back to here, like in our point of view entrance with like the organ and like all the arches here, absolutely astonishing. But yeah, that basically being said, that's all the tips and tricks I have inside of Lego Fortnite. Wait, one last trick is you can also use a pressure trick to create bridges. That's the last thing I want to mention. You can do cool stuff. Once again, pressure trick is amazing. You can do so much pressure trick stuff like this here. That's another thing you can do with the pressure trick. That's one last thing I want to mention. But yeah, basically with that being said, that's everything I want to talk about for today's video. I know it's a bit of a long one, But I hope you guys learned something from this, or you found something that you may want to try inside Lego Fortnite, as there's a lot of cool stuff that I did include in this video. But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this one, and if you did, definitely consider leaving a like. If you want to see more content like this in the future, definitely let me know down in the comments below. And if you're new here and you really like what we're seeing for, definitely consider subscribing, as I make a lot more Lego Fortnite content just like this. So with that being said, I do hope you guys did enjoy this video, and most of all, that y'all have a spectacular day, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone.